Say hi to Lauren.
Mr. Barrera. I would like to welcome everyone present today and those watching the broadcast and call the December 10th, 2019 regular meeting to order with all board members present except 2 who are on their way in from our earlier closed session meeting. And with that, we'd like to call the Army JROTC Color Guard from Madison High School to come forward. Please stand.
Forward, march, left, 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 right, 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 left. Color guard, halt, carry, colors, inward, face, present, colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry, colors, right, face, trail, colors, forward, march, left, left.
Thank you, and please be seated. I would like a motion to adopt today's agenda with Section I, the superintendent's consent agenda, to be considered next, following the adoption of the agenda, and items H4, the external auditor annual financial statements for fiscal year 2018-2019, and then we will move forward with the budgeted section, and H5, external auditor financial and performance audit reports for propositions S and Z, and measure YY for fiscal year 2018-19. And then the budgeted section to be considered next, following the adoption of the agenda after the C1 student presentation. And with that, a motion, please. Second on that. Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Please vote on it. And that passes 5-0. Superintendent Martin, please introduce the item as we're bringing forward. Which one? I don't have my agenda. Yours is not here. H5. We're bringing forward the external auditors' reports because they had appointments that they need to get to, so.
I think we have presenters coming up for that. Yes, we do have presenters coming up for that.
Well,
Thank
good evening.
you, Mr. McAllister.
We hope everybody's doing well this holiday season.
Yes.
I'm Dan McAllister, the chair of the audit committee for the district, and very proud to have been of service now for quite a number of semesters. I also have with me Matt Nethaway, who is the lead auditor from Kroll Horwath, who conducts the audit of the district and has over the last few years. I'd like to render my report and then open it up to any questions that you might have from both of us up here, or either of us, and we'll go forward from there if that suits everybody. All right. The Audit and Finance Committee was asked to review the external audit report conducted by Kroll Horwath for the 2018-19 fiscal year. The audit firm issued an unmodified opinion, which means that they believe the financial statements present fairly in all material aspects of the financial position of the district. Very, very good. Between January and December 2019, the committee was provided with periodic progress reports from the external and internal audits. Of the 6 prior year audit findings, 3 have been fully addressed and solutions implemented, and the remaining items were carried over to 2018-19, and it will be in that report. The external audit report for 18-19 discussed 3 findings: ASB accounts, not our favorites, but it seems to recur. But we're working on that, I think, and the district, to its credit, is working on finding good solutions to the issues that we seem to have on a fairly regular basis. But ASB accounts, attendance reporting, and kindergarten continuation. In particular, with respect to the findings regarding ASB accounts, the committee continues to monitor findings in that area. However, it is pleased with the response to these findings by the district's finance division staff. And I should say this too, and take a moment to recognize your staff. You have a great staff. They're very passionate about what they do. They do a great job day in and day out, week in and week out. And it's really easy to work with them. They're very, very responsive when we raise issues, and I think that the record should reflect that. The committee commends the district for moving forward with the process to hire an audit firm to conduct internal audits based upon the enterprise risk assessment that was prepared by Christy White and Associates. The committee would like to note that the district's total net position for the year ending June 30th, 2019 was 284.70 million, compared with 397.82 million for the year ending June 30th, 2018. The significant change in total net position is mainly due to an increase in revenue of 126.9 million and a slight increase in expenditures of 27.95 million as compared to the previous year, for a total change in net position of 98.98 million. The committee stresses the importance of maintaining strong reserve balances. That's always an issue, and it's maybe more of an issue in tight years and troubled years, but these are good years, and we're seeing good taxes come in, and that's positive for all of the operations of our 42 school districts throughout the county. But currently the reserve is at a minimum suggested level of 2%. We would always like to see more if it's possible, but it's a big district and falls under the 2% number versus some of the smaller ones that have a higher number to achieve. November 21st, 2019, the committee reviewed the draft of the final 18-19 audit and concurs with the recommendations contained in the audit findings. So we'd be happy to address any questions that you might have, if any. And once again, thank you for your work, but more particularly and especially the work of staff who does support what we do and has a very good track record, we think, of helping. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Anything else on the presentation? Just a second. Do you want to say anything else?
Yeah, Mr. McAllister does such a great job at stealing my thunder, and I'm here, I want to talk, so I'm just kidding. So there are a couple of pages that I want to draw your attention to, because often I get the question, Matt, thanks for the report, but how well did we do? How do we compare to other school districts? And although the audit doesn't give you a score or a grade, there are some indicators within the audit report that reflect on how well your team is doing. The first one I'd point out is on page 93, and it's an almost blank page, but this is the page that you would see any audit adjustments that we came up with in the course of the work that we've done. So if we find errors or differences that require adjustment for us to be able to provide our opinion, we'll note those and we'll bring those up in the audit report here. And again, you should be very, very pleased that you see none here. What you don't see in this report is something we communicated with the Audit and Finance Committee, and that's that we had no waived or past audit adjustments. So if we find items that are smaller in nature and don't necessarily require that we make adjustment in order to render our opinion, we'll still accumulate that information and bring it forward to management and to the committee so that they can evaluate the impact that that may have on the operations of the school district. And so we shared with them that we had no waived or past audit adjustments. Again, another very good and clear indicator as to how well your staff are doing and the team is doing in terms of preparing financial information. Dan mentioned a couple of recommendations that we made as a firm. From my perspective, I just wanted to be able to share with you the fact that these are important. These are things that your management team continue to look at. But I would hope that you would agree as you review them that the magnitude of what we found in terms of all of the work, we visited 20% of your schools and we found 0.007 ADA in one area and 1 ADA in another area. So as an auditor, that doesn't really concern us. We expect that there are things that may come up when we do our audits, and I would hope you would agree from a magnitude perspective is not as significant for your organization. So again, I would look at the findings as a positive indicator in terms of not having significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. If you put all that information together, if you look at it in its totality, I think it does speak very highly to the staff, not only the finance staff that prepare the books and records, but the school sites and the individuals that we go out and interact with. We spend a lot of time out at schools testing various areas of compliance, and again, the results that you've achieved are very positive. Thank you.
Thank you. Just hold on one second. We're going to have to make some adjustments here, but just stand right there for a second. Let's get a motion on this.
I move to approve the finding.
Second.
Okay, and do we have any speakers?
Let me double check.
No, not on item H4.
Nor H5?
Five.
Nor H5?
She just didn't
Nor-
do stage 5.
Or H5 either.
Okay, good. And having said that, now, are there any questions? I saw your hand, Ms. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, President Whitehurst Payne, and Dan and Matt, thank you so much, and Dan for your years and years of, work and service to our district. And very much appreciate your acknowledgement of the hard work and excellent work that we see with our financial staff and our staff at the school sites, and it's an important validation. It's, I think, kind of an annual conversation that we have about your sensible recommendation about maintaining adequate reserves. But again, I think it's important that we clarify that 80% of the revenue that comes into this district comes from the state of California, and roughly 10% comes from the federal government. In terms of the money that comes from the federal government for Title I or special ed, I think it's our intention, and it would certainly be the intention of the federal government, that we spend all of that money every year, that we try not to carry over money that's intended to support students during that year, and certainly not to sort of set aside some of that money in the form of a reserve. That money is intended to support students during the year. I think the same would be said in general of the general operating support that we receive from the state of California. The intention is to spend the money during that year to provide, as strong an education as possible for the students that it's intended to serve. Would also note that the state of California now has upwards of an $18 billion rainy day fund that is described as primarily so that in the case of an economic downturn, that schools would not experience the intense budget cuts that we faced, during the recession. So where there's a reserve for, for potential economic downturn to support schools, it's really sitting there, and in some ways I would have to say that that's our reserve. The reserve is the rainy day fund that is a recent, development in the state of California, but now is at a very, very high level. And so I think it would actually not be responsible on the part of our school district to hold money above the 2% in a reserve that's intended to, to support students during that year. And in particular, I think we're entering into a period where we have to have a discussion with the state government about, is there too much in that reserve right now, given that our school district and school districts up and down the state are actually we don't have the revenue to provide our students with what we know they need. So that would just be a sort of an ongoing dialogue that we have about this question of reserves.
And if there's any extra, I know people in the treasurer's office, and we could probably help you invest that money if it comes down from Sacramento.
Others?
Yeah, we've talked to you, Chair, about the ASB, and just one thought occurred to me today. The finance team for the district has done a great job, and I think the principals have been well-trained in a lot of ways. I'm wondering if, and this is just a question for the committee, but if there is a lot of turnover, we were talking about the training and everything, but is there a lot of turnover in who is actually handling the ASB funds? Because I'm wondering if that contributes to the, I know within classified employees, there's lots of moving around and transferring, and when there's adjustments in staff and so forth. I'm just curious if that contributes to the problem.
We've discussed this. Do we have staff here? Because this has been an ongoing issue. And I think staff were working towards having every student who's involved with money, as well as the staff members, to take the training, and trainings would be frequent. Do we have anybody here from
Yes.
finance? Because that's been an ongoing issue ever since I've been on the audit committee for at least 3-4 years almost.
Please introduce yourself so
Hi.
that people know your staff.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jody McAllis, the controller for the district. So yes, to answer your question, we offer trainings the first of the year for all of our ESAs and our financial clerks, as well as the principals and ASB advisors. We do QuickBooks training. We do an ASB 101 training that our operations auditors put on, and then we also do training again in the springtime, and then we also have an open lab that we offer once a month. So if any of the finance clerks want to come and get one-on-one hands-on training, they can bring all their work with them, or we can go out to their site. And then if anybody new comes on board, which we actually have several right now that we've got some retirements and some new people transitioning in, we will go out to them and sit with them and train them one-on-one for anything that they need. We've also worked with the financial clerks to involve the students a lot more. We've had a lot of success in some of the ASB, the treasurers and the presidents that are learning more about the finances and really what their responsibilities are as far as ASB.
So it's reducing the number, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Others? Any others?
If I could, I think Matt has got a great perspective on this because he deals with districts statewide. And this is an issue that is not isolated to this district. It's an issue that is confronted and faced by every school district in the state.
Thank you.
Yeah, just briefly, a couple of things, and he's right on. This is something that we deal with, especially at unified school districts where you have not only elementary sites, but you have high schools as well. It's a challenge because there's a lot of cash handling that takes place. There are a number of individuals who are involved. It's decentralized. And so what we really look for is the ability for the district to provide that ongoing support and training to the individuals who are involved in the ASB. And we work with them in terms of providing training. We've actually come out and done training for your district as well. It's nice to hear it from the auditor sometimes because we have a different perspective. We have some stories that we can share that they're fun to share, but they weren't fun for the individuals that had to go through them. I think the other thing, too, to point out is that although you see this as kind of a recurring theme in the audit report, there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is we don't visit every school site every year. We visit about 20% of the school sites, and so some of these school sites might not have been visited in a couple of years. And so you have maybe a new individual, they haven't had an independent audit come through in a couple of years, and so it's important for us to be able to highlight and recommend those internal controls. And we look at really kind of, and I use the word magnitude because that's really important, I think, when you look at findings. We look at how is it going over time, right? At any given point in time, I could walk out to a school site and make some recommendations, but how is it going for the district over time? And I think you'll see that the number of instances of opportunity for improvement that we find in the independent audit have decreased over the past several years. So again, that's an indicator to us that the district's doing the right things in terms of providing the training and the ongoing support, which is really critical.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you, and especially to Mr. Dan McAllister. Today is December 10th for those property owners here who are listening to me.
It's a busy day
and
for you.
he's here for us today instead of collecting our monies that we had to write checks. Yes, we did that too, yes. So thank you, and thank you for continuing to support us as a district.
Thank you so
Thank you for your
Appreciate your
report.
service. Thank you.
I'm going to separate these votes. H4, let's get the motion on the floor for H4.
So move.
That's H4.
Okay.
That's what they just
And now let's vote on that one. And that passes 5-0. And now H5.
I'll move H5.
Need to see it.
Okay, please vote on it. Okay, that passes 5-0, and that clears the floor. Thank you both for your support. And we want to go back and back it up. And let's look at the consent.
Do you want to read this part here?
Yes. We've already adopted the agenda and the motion and move forward. Let's go back up to having the videotape played for those who don't know what, how we operate and what goes on. So if Zach, not Zach, this is Jerry. Zach will have his turn. If Jerry could come on for us on the video.
Today's meeting of the Board of Education is a business meeting that is conducted in public, and board members will not engage in a dialogue with the members of the audience. The opportunities for members of the public to provide input to the board on agendized items and to provide testimony on non-agenda items is through the submittal of an electronic public testimony request. The time period for speakers on each agendized item are set by the board as described in the board's bylaws and will be announced to the members of the public as each agendized item comes up for discussion. Speakers on agendized items will be called on to speak during the discussion of the item. If you wish to address the board on any of today's agendized items, or on a subject that is not on today's agenda, and your name is not on the speaker list, printed on the blue paper located at both entrances to the auditorium, and you have not already submitted a public testimony request, please complete the electronic form. For your convenience, iPads are available at the reception desk in the lobby and are also on the table at the back of the auditorium. Public testimony requests are automatically time-stamped and must be submitted prior to the beginning of the discussion on an item. If you need assistance completing or submitting the request, please see Board Services staff. You are asked to provide your name or the name you wish to be called by on the public testimony request so that the board action officer can ensure that all speakers on an item have been called. Public testimony on non-agenda matters will be heard at the conclusion of all agendized business. And a Spanish interpreter is available and is seated at the media table if you need any assistance. Thank you for your interest in participating in our board meeting.
And thank you, Jerry. With that, let us go back to the consent agenda. Does any board member wish to remove any items? I know that we have speakers on
We have speakers on I-7, I-24, and I-32.
32, yes.
I'll move the consent agenda except for I-7, 24, and 32.
Thank you, and we've already removed 5, 12, and 49. With that, let us please vote on this. That passes 5-0. Now, let us get to our student presentations. You're sitting there so patiently looking at us and going, what is going on here? That's okay. It's life. And we have with us today a student presentation from
I have a public comment on it.
Yes, Citizen has signed up to speak on C1. I was thinking it would be after they present, but she's here.
Yes, we'd like to hear the students first, and then the item needs to be presented first, and then we'll have the speaker. Have you to make comments.
I don't understand.
The students are about to, this is the item for the students to make a presentation,
Right?
and then afterwards, we hear speakers on it.
Okay, that's not generally how you do that.
We've not had any speakers on a presentation until after the presentation has been made on any item. The presentation
Okay.
is made so that you can
Okay.
comment on whatever
Okay.
the item is.
Okay.
Yes,
All right, thank you.
thank you. So with that, Area 6 Superintendent Sophia Ferrer.
Thank you so much for having me, Superintendent Sydney Martin and Board President Whitehurst Payne and trustees. It's a great pleasure to be here to be part of the introduction for the students at SCPA. The one thing I wanted to say is that every time I've been in the presence of these students, observing their performances and looking at the tremendous talent that they have, it's had a tremendous impact on me. I think about it for days after the presentation. And so it really speaks to the work and the leadership of Principal Farson, his vice principals, his artistic director, and the amazing teachers that they have at that school. So without further ado, I introduce the principal, Mr. Farson.
I thank you for this opportunity. It is definitely hard work, and I'm humbled every day that I get to walk into our classrooms and see what our kids are capable of when you believe in them. As you know, or may not know, we are 6 through 12. We represent 81 different zip codes from San Diego County and have students from all of your districts. Sorry, I'm not attending all of your Morse cluster or cluster meetings. One of the things I would want to definitely share is that we are working to become one of the first public non-tuition magnet schools to be nationally accredited in the arts. And all of our students, the arts are not an elective, they are part of their core curriculum. Today with me, I have junior Jacob Bader and senior Alan Page, wonderful accomplished musicians who have composed their own pieces today that they will share with you. I also have our music director, Tamara Page, who leads every day with her heart through music. Thank you. I think first, actually, too, we have a promotional video that is being launched throughout the community. The San Diego School of Creative and Performing Arts is an incredible family of passionate and committed faculty, staff, students, and families. We bring an artistic and academic curriculum that is nationally renowned. Our students are unique in that they are united by a love, passion, and commitment for the arts. Our competitive academic curriculum was designed such that the young, burgeoning artists will be able to develop the skills of a highly literate and sophisticated thinker for the 21st century.
The SCPA experience is one that's very different from other schools. We have students from 52 zip codes. We have lots of different clubs on campus that celebrate different cultures. The minute the students walk on campus, they see that their art classes are professional. Their teachers are here to support them, and we support the uniqueness of every student.
Students inside and outside the classroom are always making art. They're always participating in their passion with the drawing pad, sketching ideas, really develop their own personal voice, their own personal vision, methods that they've discovered through explorations.
The arts certainly bring you personality, because once you learn to get inside yourself through dance, through music, through orchestra, your life changes.
And I think that's something that SCPA really does have, is that it lets you be who you are, it lets you expand and explore who you are, and it loves you all the way through it.
For the ninth graders, they audition for a specific program. They have 4 years of step-by-step instruction by working acting professionals who guide them in all the skill sets that they need to acquire in order to have a successful career or a successful approach to getting into a university or conservatory.
Students really develop an incredible and unique skill set that can translate to any field that they wish to study or pursue.
We have people that are dentists, that are engineers, that are outside of the performing arts world, but we've all gained something from coming here to SCPA.
Our team has done their research. They've looked at the top institutions for arts training, and they looked at what was necessary for all students to be successful.
I have students who are executives at Disney, winning Emmy Awards, on television, on Broadway. This school changed lives.
The ideal candidate is a student that has passion, that has drive, that understands what hard work means. Sometimes with artists, we find that we're afraid of success, so we're afraid to take risks. The ideal SCPA student takes those risks.
No matter who you are, race, ethnicity, gender, background, you have a safe place that you can call home. It's a place where you can both discover who you are and create who you will be.
We say thank you for coming and thanks for sharing your creative art history here with us today. And now we'll have our speaker.
So I would like to see that the school district posts the videos of the student performances and invites the public to view them instead of using the meeting time to cut some time. I was looking at the overtime costs, and the overtime costs are a lot for running these meetings. This auditorium right now is empty. Half of the people here are employees. Getting paid to be here. For example, the police sergeants are paid $30,000 each year in overtime for these meetings. That money could be spent on field trips and instruments for the students, and other things that the children need. So my suggestion is that you post performances on the website, that you invite the public to the performances they have at the schools, and even better, move these meetings to daytime to save money that could be spent on the students.
Any other speakers? That's it. Thank you, and thanks again to our students for their performance. Now, let us move on to item D1. Are there any reportable items, action items?
There are not.
Thank you. Administrative assignments?
You do have a speaker on D1.
Oh, we have.
Citizen is speaking on D1 also.
Again, I want to express my concern for the lack of reports out from closed session, especially the lack of settlement agreements that are causing the taxpayers thousands and tens of thousands of dollars. The public should have these agreements. These agreements should be posted so people know exactly what you people are paying out in legal costs for educator misconduct and other problems.
Thank you. That was on D1. Okay, D2. Superintendent.
No, President Whitehurst-Payne, there are no administrative assignments this evening.
Any speakers?
Yes, we do have a speaker, Francine Maxwell.
Okay.
Francine Maxwell, Community Member, District E. I want to make sure that the record reflects that you newly created a position at Lincoln High School, the School Site Operations Specialist. That was not a position that was on the budget projection for 2019-2020. And so we don't know how that position is being funded as a community. With a $70 million deficit, why do you allow your one employee to continue to add new managerial positions? This position pays a lot of money. The person that received the position was a community aide. So let's see how much money you went from being a community aide to now being a site operations specialist. The appointment was given to a man that was working out of class. Then you realized that the public was paying attention, so you posted it properly. But you already had someone that was working out of class in the position, and you subsequently gave it to him. And so, once again, the public is left to ask questions about why this position was created. We completely understand that the board president feels that it's a necessary position, but this money, you're supposed to be really good stewards of it, and you're not. You're allowing positions to be created over and over, and this person is making almost as a teacher. So are you saying that teachers are not more important? Because this person is making almost as much as a teacher.
Any other speakers? Okay, thank you. D3, our ASB presidents are not here tonight. They're hiding, okay.
Hi, I'm Issa Hazeltine. I'm Sarah High School's ASB president. Unfortunately, Isla, who is Point Loma's president, couldn't come. She's sick, so it's just me. But so in my past 4 years at Sarah High School, I've been an ASB for 3 of them, and I've seen many positive changes in the school's climate and also watched teachers create lasting bonds with the students. So this year specifically, some history at our school has been made, especially with our football team. So our team won their first ever CIF championship title this past season, and they even made it to the state playoffs where they played a game at El Monte High School, which is just east of LA. So we also had a spirit bus that bussed a bunch of students up to go support our team there. So this season, they also broke the school record for the most points scored in a Sarah game, bringing in 76 points. And so to support our team throughout their season, our student section attendance greatly increased because we were able to get props for our student sections, and we even had a DJ come to help the students engage more in the game. So with more participation in our student section at football games, we're hoping that same spirit can transfer over to our basketball games, which are the next big sport that we'll be supporting. So the spirit has also carried over into the school climate because ASB has been looking to support student organizations in any way they can, especially with our theater right now. So a couple years ago, our school was blessed with Mr. Blocker, who is our new theater teacher, and the ambitions and visions he has for productions at our school have come to life in vivid plays, musical, and cabarets. So our theater club right now is producing Working, which is a cabaret-style play. So the actors have been walking throughout the audience, engaging the back rows. And so more plans for later this year are matched with that same ambition, and they want to perform the play Metamorphoses. So for that play, they need to build a pool of water that cascades down into another pool. So that's what they're working on right now after their play. So Mr. Blocker is just one example of some of the great new teachers we have on staff, but old and new teachers are starting to create better bonds with students and making the entire school a more positive and accepting place. So in the next couple of school weeks, Sarah will be jam-packed with events to put on. On December 18th, our Circle of Friends is holding their annual winter ball, so that's a chance for everyone to meet new people and connect on a more personal level. And our final Friday before break, December 20th, ASB is putting on a pep rally dedicated to recognizing students and student organizations. The biggest group we're recognizing is our football team for their historical season, but we also plan to recognize our drumline, our theater, and many different clubs. On January 17th, the senior class in ASB are putting on their annual Powder Puff game, hoping to raise money for the senior class's prom that is happening May 9th. And then, so in the 3rd week of January, since our semester ends, we'll be diving into our new semester by welcoming the 8th graders from our 2 local middle schools onto our campus to get tours, help them with articulation, and eat lunch with all the high schoolers so they get a feeling of what the high school is like. So with all of that business going on, ASB and the whole school have still managed to be successful in keeping up the positivity at Sarah High School. Thank you.
Sounds like a lot of excitement is going on there, and congratulations to your football team. Speaker.
Yes, we do have one speaker, citizen.
So regarding the ASB President's Report, I would like to see it include a financial report. I want the students to be aware of how much money they have, and ASB money is supposed to be controlled by the students. So if they are required to present a regular report, I know that they're being made aware of the money that's being that they've got. For example, Morse High School has a money market account of over $50,000. Claremont High School has an account of $45,000. La Jolla High School has an account of $285,000. Wagenheim Middle School has an account of over $57,000. That's student money. They're supposed to be making decisions about how to spend it. It's their money to spend it. And adults, administrators, ASB advisors are not telling them that they have this money. Because I see this money, and there's a list of them, and it's on I-27, and I see this money rolling over year after year after year. So why are students still fundraising when there's this kind of money that they're supposed to be aware of to be able to spend?
Thank you. Item D4, student superintendent's report. And thank you.
Thank you, President Whitehurst-Payne. Last week, we had an update from Lee Dolgaroff on our bond program and some of the ways that we're using it to transform our city. And so tonight, I just want to talk about a project that's near and dear to my heart, which is the transformation of Wilson Middle School and Central Elementary. That's a project that I was very interested in when I was principal at Central. I was advocating for it back when I spent 10 years at Central Elementary, and to finally see it come to fruition now is truly a dream come true. And yesterday is when we held the topping off ceremony where we raised the highest beam, and most exciting part of the event was to see the smiles on the faces of the 5th grade students from Central who are going to be attending the brand new Wilson Middle School, and they got to sign the beam and had a lot to say that they were writing on the beam and knowing that their words are going to be there forever. And they'll be starting school on the Wilson's campus, and it's being revitalized truly from the ground up, which is truly a game changer for the entire community. It's just the beginning, the opening of Wilson, because as soon as we're done with the new Wilson Middle School, we're going to demolish the old Wilson Middle School and replace it with the brand new building for Central Elementary School, which is going to create state-of-the-art educational complex right in the heart of City Heights. So if you want to see how our schools are bringing new life to some of our historically disadvantaged communities, I invite all to take a drive through City Heights and see the new Hoover High School Theater, the new Wilson campus, and coming soon, the brand new Central campus. And that's just one highlight. There's many more that we can talk about, but that was yesterday's event. So thank you to the team.
Thank you. Do we have a speaker on that? Okay. Thank you. Let us move to our board reports, starting with Dr. McQuarrie.
Well, I want to highlight a day that happens at the end of spring each year. It's when our students commit to the college and university that they're going to attend. And I have a video that shares this exciting moment. It's called Signing Day. And I share it today at this moment because now is another important part of students selecting their university and colleges, but it's determining how they're going to pay for that and financing their college education. This is the time now for students to sign up and apply for federal aid, and it's December, January, and February. We hope that our students are taking advantage of that. So in the spring, when they sign for their commitment to their college university, they'll have a way to pay for it. Thank you.
On behalf of the Padres, welcome to Petco Park.
Madison Taylor. I'm playing softball at Santa Clara University.
Christian Becerra. I go to Madison High School, and I'm committed to Cal State University San Marcos to play baseball.
Kathleen Kamahavong, and I'll be playing golf at the University of Nevada, Reno.
Shauna Frankie, and I'll be playing water polo at Brown University.
Malaya Sharp, I'll be playing soccer at UC Merced.
Mashlyn Sourwine from Claremont, and I'll be playing water polo at Indiana University.
Let me be the first to congratulate all the student athletes that are here today.
Really excited to play at the next level, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity I've been given.
It's very relieving. It's great to know where I'm going to be playing next year.
I'm really excited. Stanford has always been my dream school, and I'm really excited to play beside my sister.
Wanted to get a new experience from San Diego, and Minnesota's going to be a lot different, so I'm just excited for new experiences.
To be committed to Berkeley, it was a lot of work, and I'm happy that it finally paid off.
The people that helped you get here, your parents, your coaches.
I'm really grateful for the opportunity to play volleyball in college and just go to an amazing school.
It makes me feel better knowing that I can go to college and make my family feel happier about raising me.
I'm going to be very emotional when I depart from my parents, but it'll be good to find out who I really am.
I think all of us have put in so much work and dedication that we deserve it.
Gotta celebrate this day today with my family.
Go Dons, baby.
Go Bulldogs.
Gators.
Go Ducks, baby. Go Aggies.
Greyhound.
Go Buckhead.
Go Terriers.
Go Hoosiers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barrera.
Thanks, Dr. McQuarrie. That was terrific. You know, we should have like an event for all of our students when they, choose their colleges. We could do it at, Qualcomm Stadium or where. Is that what it's still called? No. I still call it the MRF. Yeah. So I just wanted to, add to what the superintendent talked about our topping off ceremony at Wilson yesterday. President Whitehurst Payne gave us a good reminder when our county treasurer was here that people are looking at their property tax bills, right now as they should, and they'll see, line items for San Diego Unified, and we just can't thank the taxpayers of this community enough for the investment that they're making in the future of our young people. And I would encourage every taxpayer to go drive down Elkhorn Boulevard, look at Wilson, look at Hoover, go over to Crawford, go over to the new Logan Memorial Complex, go up and down this district and see what you're investing in. You should be very proud in what we're doing as a community and as a generation for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to report to the board on a meeting we had last Friday morning where Trustee Barrera and Superintendent Martin were there meeting with the 10 large urban districts at the beginning of the day at the CSBA conference. And we've seen across the nation, various states, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Arizona, and so forth, there's been a big movement about improving public education. We've seen strikes in Oakland and Los Angeles and Sacramento. And every year we are doing the same thing, is getting incremental increases and going and deciding what are we going to cut this year, what are we going to cut the next year. And this has really been a 40-year problem, more than 40 years since the passage of Proposition 13. And we decided that as a group of districts, we need to do something to look for comprehensive reform of our educational funding system. And so basically, what we're doing is uniting together so that we can appropriately lobby the state. And we're very fortunate that our former government relations director here is now has that role in Los Angeles, which is obviously the much largest district in the state. And we also have now Enrique Ruacho, who is our government relations director, who is previously worked with Martha in LA, so we have a very good connection there. And what we are going to do, the first step we decided was it's going to be a letter to the governor asking for a meeting of these 10 largest districts. These 10 districts represent about, even though there are 1,000 districts in the state, represent about 20% of the students in the entire state. And the legislators that represent these students actually represent a majority of the legislature, so we really can have a strong political force. So these are the first steps. We're going to find out, what's going to happen for this year, but we really want to work on what is the long-term solution for funding, and so I'm very excited about what we can do with this group of 10 districts, which is San Diego, Corona Norco, San Bernardino, Long Beach, Los Angeles, Santa Ana, Oakland, San Francisco, and Fresno, and Sacramento.
Thank you for that update, and I just have we all want more money, and I'm glad to hear that we're working on it on all fronts. I just have a plethora of things here. Today, this morning, in fact, Dr. Mike and I were at Oak Park. Students received glasses, and we talked about the fact that they gave out 51 pairs of glasses to students who needed them. So we're doing that. Knox is at the bottom of the page there. We have the conference was last week. The California School Boards Association conference was a wonderful event to catch up on some things and find out what's going on statewide. Then we have yesterday, Crawford Cluster had a cluster meeting. One of the speakers there, guest speakers for the California School Boards Association. And I do want to mention the fact that Knox got a donation for all of the students at the school. They all received sneakers or tennis shoes or whatever they call them now, Converse. They got a donation through a grant for all of their students to receive new sneakers, and it's just showing pictures of them just actually putting them on with the boxes there, etc. A lot more is going on, but that's just a sample of what's happening out there in the field. And I want to thank the general public for all that they do. As Mr. Barrera said, we do this work for our students, and we thank the citizens of San Diego for helping us to do this work. Thank you very much. With that, let us move on to item F. This is our consent agenda. I'd like a motion to adopt the board consent agenda.
I'll move item F1.
Second on that. Before we vote, do we have a speaker? No speaker, please vote. And that passes 5-0. Thank you. And we're now down to item G1, which is a proposed revision to the Board of Education bylaws and annual readoption of board bylaws.
I move for approval.
Thank you. A second on that? Second. Dr. McCrary's given us a second on that. And now, do we have any speakers on that item?
Yes, we have two speakers on this item, Zachary Patterson and Brianna Pengelinen.
Please come forward. 3 minutes each.
Good evening. My name is Zachary Patterson, and I am a student at University City High School. I speak to you today regarding a provision in Section 1035, Student Board Representative, letter E. While I imagine this might seem unusual, as I am the student that will be sworn in on the next agenda item from these bylaws, I feel that I need to share my opinion with you to ensure that student board members for years to come have the ability to be effective leaders. In the final sentence of E, it states that each student board member may only serve one term. For a student board member, a term is 1 year long. The first year of being on a board of education is a huge learning experience. Just feeling comfortable in meetings can take extensive time. As a student board member, though, it can even be more difficult, as a student needs to get used to sitting and being an active participant in conversations that take place with people that are significantly older than them. No intention. All young at heart. This is why continuity is of critical importance in order to be an effective board member. The longer a student has the ability to serve, the more effective they can and will become. Keep in mind, though, that the longest a student board member potentially could serve is relatively 3 years, and that is because in order for them to be reelected, they would have to win 3 separate times, and that would be sophomore, junior, and senior year. However, by prohibiting the student member's ability to run for reelection at the end of their year in office, we are removing the opportunity for the student to build on what they have started in their first year and are holding them back from seeing through the changes that they have personally worked to create. While I recognize the argument that it is really important to get a diverse group of students on the dais, I want to recognize that there are so many ways that we as students can be advocates for change in our school district. This can include the many already thriving groups in our district, including the Council of ASB Presidents, the Student Equity Ambassadors, and even the Student Advisory Board, which works to bring a diverse group of students together from across the district. This past week, I attended the CSBA Education Conference. At the event, I met so many different student board members who described how effective they felt and how effective they have become because of their time in office. They were able to serve for a second term, and it really did revolutionize their ability to be effective board members. And I want to start off on the right foot, and I want to ensure that we as a school district can provide an effective platform for a student board member to succeed in the future. I want to emphasize that I have nothing to gain from this, as I have already been granted a provision to be allowed to run for a full term. I am here because I truly believe that we are doing our students a disservice by keeping them this provision. I ask that you reconsider and instead allow the students of San Diego Unified to determine whether the student should serve as their representative. I want to introduce Brenna Pengelinen. She currently serves as the California Student Board Member on the State Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board President Whitehurst Payne, board members, and Superintendent Martin. My name is Brenna Pengelinen, and I am the current student board member on the California State Board of Education. I have also served as the student representative on the Sweetwater Union High School District Board. Both of these positions have a 1-year term limit, and I'm here to speak on my experiences with this requirement. Anyone here in the staff, audience, or on the board probably remembers their first experience opening a board agenda for a meeting like the one we are at today. If you weren't confused, then you deserve all of my respect. In simplest terms, the discussions that happen at these meetings are complex. California accountability systems are complex. Budget discussions are complex. Logistics behind education are complex. Now try to put yourself in the shoes of a student who has to learn everything in 1 year. I can say for myself that I am not one to settle for not understanding something. On the Sweetwater board, I consistently pushed myself to understand the discussions so I could then participate in the discussions. Realistically, this only took place by the end of my term. Did I feel like I made a positive impact? Yes. But could I have done more with my extended knowledge? Also yes. Everyone also knows that implementation takes time. Within a year, I was flooded with ideas after touring different facilities within our district, having countless meetings with students, and really grasping what our district does. However, many of these ideas were left as just that, ideas. The opportunity to run for a second term could have allowed me to take action to pursue further work within the district in making these ideas a reality. Knowing this and having experienced this, I know how much more I could have accomplished. With that said, I highly recommend the board considers allowing students to have the opportunity to run for a second term, if they wish, for the San Diego Unified Student Board Member position. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for our speakers. Board members, any discussion? Mr. Barrera.
So I want to thank Zach and Brenna both for coming in and weighing in on this issue. And I think what it shows is how much richer our district is going to be now that we have the voice of the elected student board member. As we developed the bylaws and policies that we're voting on tonight, we did it in a board governance workshop without the voice of the elected student representative. And I think it's an important perspective that we're hearing from you tonight, and I expect we're going to hear an important perspective that's going to open up our thinking on many, many issues going forward. And so with that said, I do understand and do respect the position that you're advocating for, and I would propose an amendment to the adoption of the bylaws, which would allow for a second term for an elected board member. Now, the board member is still going to have to run for a second term. The students, will vote about whether or not the board member would get a second term, but I would propose that the student representative would be allowed to run for a second term.
Any other discussion? Dr. McCrary.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure the item is fully discussed. What I see is the benefit for moving forward as the item has been presented is the opportunity for increased diversity, so that more students can have this opportunity to sit on the dais and speak and provide the student voice. The other side is the importance of having continuity, and I think as Zach has said and as Barina has said, how critical is for the person to have the experience, and that experience only comes through exposure, and that exposure comes through multiple opportunities to present their case and have the experience. I know that for us as board members, we had a long discussion about whether we should have term limits, and eventually we did settle on a minimum of 3 terms, of 3 4-year terms.
Maximum.
Yeah, maximum. And there are also board members across the state. There are 1,000 school districts, and many of those have board members who have served, and 5,000 board members, and many of them have served longer than 10 years, 15 years. I think one served as much as more than 50 years, who was out of Fresno. And so what continuity is there? I do feel that the student voice is important. I think effectiveness is there. I don't think that we, with our bylaws, reflecting on the way the bylaws is presented, I don't think. I would favor giving a re-election for a second term and let the students decide whether that person should be limited or given a second term. I think it would allow us to have not only effective board member, a more effective student representative, but it would also provide the continuity that would be necessary and the diversity that would result. So I accept the friendly amendment.
Okay. Amendment. Anybody else want to say something?
Yeah, I did want to just chime in also, and I don't know if this is necessary to be a part of an amendment or if it's just the way that we ought to operate as a district, and I've asked for this information a couple of times and have yet to receive it. I would really like to know the results of the last election and the runoff for the vote totals for every school. I want to know, did any school south of 8 vote? And I want to know what percentage of the students' populations of all the schools participated in the election. Also, I'm curious, in normal elections, we have like a voter pamphlet where equal time is given to all people running for the office. Were the entire universe of eligible students provided consistent information about all of their choices with a picture and maybe the opportunity to write 100 words about them in their campaign, and have the district equally disseminate that amongst all of eligible student voters? Those are the kinds of things that I really would like to see as a part of something like this. And I don't know if it just is up to us to do or if it needs to be a part of the bylaw change.
Could, and in response to what Trustee Beiser is saying, could Stacy Siders inform us a little bit about what she knows about how the election occurred and the results and so forth?
Thank you for
this
coming
was the first
forward.
time, so obviously it hadn't been done before. So.
Yes, and let me tell you, it was a learning experience. Thank goodness, partnering with instructional technology, they helped me create a forum to go district-wide, and so we have been working with them. I did receive a question if we're able to identify down each student from where, because it was from the at stu.sandy.net email addresses. It's just going to take some time to identify back because we had thousands of student votes. So did hear that question, didn't hear your other questions. We did have a voter guide that we modeled much like is done in our city, and so we had student pictures, we had candidate statements. We did our best to model, and I had students, they did help me create the process to do this for the first time. So we worked to model it after city elections, and
okay.
Yes, so I'm not sure if that answers all your questions.
Thank you. I think that really helps. And I look forward to a memo to all the board or the public or whatever, somewhere public, the vote results, not just how many from each school, but also what percentage of the student body does that represent, et cetera.
Absolutely, and like I said, we learned a lot, and so I appreciate the feedback, and we have a lot of great ways to move forward for the next election that is coming up really soon.
And just to add on to that question, and I believe this was stated before, but how many candidates were there?
We were really excited to have 6 candidates apply, and let me see if I have them off the top of my head. We had a representative from Hoover High School run, a representative from Patrick Henry High School, University City High School, San Diego High School, Lincoln High School, and La Jolla High School. So we had 6 candidates run in the initial election. None of them received 50% plus 1, and so we ran a runoff election between the San Diego High School student and the University City High School student, and it was a really tight race. It was 46% to 54%, I believe, or somewhere right around there. So it was very close and quite exciting.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, we're talking about one person representing the entire student body, 100,000 plus kids, students, and obviously the interest is there. and that one person is going to be able to represent the district, but they are from only one area. And to give some others the opportunity to at least have the chance to participate, I think is very important. The fact that you had Hoover and Lincoln and some of the other schools weigh in says to me that there's some interest that some other students would like to participate, and they're already disadvantaged because they will not have served on the board, and some of them are probably seniors and will move on. But I just think that I understand this first year that Zach is, he's going to do the next year because this is a partial year. But I would like to see us let this process work out, and we can always make changes to it later. But for this initial year, given where we are, I'd like to see us just give more opportunities to others. Yes.
Related question, going forward, the term starts on July 1. This election was happened in the fall. I'm assuming that the election for the 2021 will happen this spring, and then the elected representative would be sworn in on the last meeting of June, and then begin service July 1. Yeah.
That is my understanding. So we had worked with the Council of ASB Presidents last year and collected information about the elections that they host at their school sites. And typically, yes, it's in the spring, March, April, May at the latest. And so the hope was to align and have the election happening around that time.
This spring for next year.
In the spring, and then they would be elected and start on July 1st.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I would just, thank you, Stacy. That's very helpful, and thank you for all the work you did on this first time. I just want to make a few comments. I think Zachary has brought up a very interesting issue, because term limits really are a conundrum in a lot of cases. I know we have them in Sacramento, and I don't think it's always the best thing, because it kind of results sometimes in musical chairs. In some ways in Sacramento, I think it gives the lobbyists more power, since they're the ones that orient the new legislators that come to town. Obviously on the national level, we don't have term limits. We do have term limits on the school board because it was really the public really spoke up and said that they wanted it. We made it 3 terms rather than 2. And it really is, I mean, this is a good example of all the issues that will come up on the board for Zach, is that it really is a delicate balancing act, because in terms of being effective and being there for a period of time, there's certainly a lot of merit to that. But I also think, and everybody's acknowledged that too, is that the diversity issue is really important, and having, I think it will be really revitalizing to the board to have a representative from potentially from a different place each year, who will kind of bring some new perspective and a new viewpoint to the board. So I understand that a 2-term limit is reasonable. I'm just going to tilt the scale a little myself on the other side in terms of the fact that we can have diversity of participation of the students, and the benefit that will be to the board each year with some fresh blood at that point.
I just want to clarify my thinking. I now understand that the next election will be spring of 21 for the student to take place July 1, 21.
Right.
So Zach will serve now through spring of 21. Got it.
Well, right, and this is, well, I mean, as far as the next school year will depend upon what happens in the election, but just as in the county and the school board and everything, it doesn't take effect until the next election, right? So the person serves out the term they're currently serving, and then it comes into effect at that point, regardless of what they've done before, right? Which is like when the term limits were passed for the school board. From that point forward, they were eligible for 3 more terms, which would mean, if I were still here, it'd be like 80 or 90.
So it's my understanding, Madam President, that the motion on the floor, as amended, is to allow students to run again for a second term. Is that the motion on the floor? And it's also my understanding from what I'm hearing that, okay, and we need to vote on that proposed amendment before we vote on the motion.
On the bylaws.
Right.
Bylaws.
Yeah, and you know, if I'm hearing correctly, President Whitehurst-Payne has, so eloquently stated that what we should do at this point in time is not adopt the amendment, not to say that we can't revisit it and implement the recommendation, later. So that it could be effective. And so I think that it's very interesting. I really would like to see some mechanism so that we can get, representation of other parts of the city from time to time. And I don't know how we do that. I don't know if we do that through the student representatives that are sitting here right now from Sarah High School, because this amazing student body president, the student body presidents that come don't necessarily have the same abilities as what was just the individual just elected with regard to being able to actually cast a vote on items, whether it's symbolic or otherwise. But they absolutely have been encouraged since I've been on the school board for 10 years to, comment on agenda items and give us some insight on different things that are going on in their schools as it relates to the agenda items and the votes that we're taking that have a direct impact on you and the students at your school. So to the extent that, that we do have diverse representation as ASB presidents rotate to participate in different board meetings, I think that the elected representative can create some of that continuity. So I think we have the diversity by visiting ASB presidents, and then I think we have the continuity of somebody that really can dig in deep to the agenda, try to understand, learn it, and do better from it. So I think that there are opportunities for both. Having been on the board for almost, for a long time, I've observed firsthand the learning curve of understanding the nuances of everything on the superintendent's consent agenda and having the opportunity to really learn and digest and understand that information. I've seen a lot of new school board members come on board. Some are able to get over that learning curve quicker, and others take a little bit longer. Everybody learns at different pace, at different rates. So to the extent that that's a concern also, I think that's an important point. I'm really concerned about the power of incumbency, because I believe that whoever this individual is, they're going to have a tremendous advantage over any other student that wants the opportunity because of their incumbency and their visibility within the student body population throughout the year. So I think that's something to also take into account. How do we create a level playing field in that situation?
Okay, yes, Mr. Barrera.
I just maybe add one more thought and terrific, points on the sort of the balancing that we need to do on this. But what I would say is having a term limit of more than of only one term does not necessarily solve the diversity problem. I mean, it's very possible that you could have one term limit and have a student elected from the same school every year going forward. So, and it is true, as Trustee Beiser pointed out that, and as President Whitehurst-Payne pointed out, that the school board at any point can amend its bylaws, moving forward. I would simply argue that a future school board, if it is experiencing a situation where we're not seeing diversity in the elected student board member that is the same school or rough, type of schools, from one part of town continue to get elected, that based on that experience might, think about a one-term term limit at that point. But that's not something that we have yet experienced, and so I would say, I would just simply argue it's premature to impose a one-term term limit on the assumption that we're not going to see diversity moving forward. That would be my argument. So I think we should adopt the amendment now,
right.
Is my point.
Yeah, and that's interesting because it actually occurred to me, not necessarily due tonight, but the issue of one rule we might consider in the future would be, even if I'm basing this on having one-year terms, would be to not repeat from the same high school. You know, that doesn't totally guarantee the diversity we want, but at least it makes sure it doesn't say concentrate in one place. So there's lots of possibilities on this. So anyway, but we have to vote tonight
modification in there. Well, he can always modify that right now. Put that in there.
Put into our bylaws that that we couldn't have consecutive elected board members from the same school. That would be a second amendment, and so yeah.
Well, let's do one amendment at a time.
One amendment at a time.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So we're voting
So the first
on
motion
Mr.
that you
Barrett's
made,
amendment
okay.
for 2 terms, right?
So this is 2 terms.
And that passes 3-2. Okay, now the second motion that was made.
Yeah, I'm happy to actually make that motion. I think it's a sensible motion that the that we couldn't have consecutive elected student board members from the same school.
Okay.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay.
After the second term.
After the second term.
Right, there are already
Right.
2 terms.
Yes.
Right.
Please vote. And that passes 5-0. And now for the larger motion.
Oh, our bylaws?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion, speakers and whatnot, let's
I
vote
think we already moved
otherwise.
on that.
And that passes 5-0. Thank you. Congratulations.
I'll move item G1, G2, the annual readoption of the board governance policies.
Second.
Okay. Any speakers?
Yes, we do have one speaker on G2. That's Francine Maxwell.
Richard, can I get my ballot?
Yes, I'll give John your.
Who's your ballots? Who has my ballots?
Who's got Kevin?
Do I get any? You have Richard's? I have Richard's.
Sharon,
Did Richard get 3 sets of ballots? Oh. Who has Kevin? Who has mine?
I gave it to Richard.
Oops.
Who's ballots?
Sorry, Ms. Max.
Oh, no, do your thing.
No, just, does everybody have the right
Here's
one?
advisors. And where are mine?
Okay, well, that's later in the meeting.
G2, page 6 clearly states the superintendent must follow the LCAP goals for all students. She has egregiously failed this in the area of the EL students. LCAP goals 1, 2, and 3 clearly outline steps that must be taken to enhance the learning of the EL student. The goals require the district to supply students with proper curriculum, which she and her chief of staff did not, and to work with students to become proficient in the English language. You can strongly see that she failed at that. Failed the students, failed the parents, and failed the community. As stated in previous board meetings, the EL students were not placed properly in their courses, along with not having state-adopted curriculum for EL students at all sites, not the selective ones that they came and produced. We also, on page 7, 2A, states that the board will receive an internal report in which the superintendent submits information that certifies and documents on the board compliance or reasonable progress in the LCAP document. Obviously, the superintendent submitted false information to the diocese because the information in the LCAP concerning the EL students did not occur, plain and simple. Now, we also got a break because we're doing the smoke and mirrors again. Your chief of staff has failed our students so poorly that the state had to come in and create a 1-year accommodation plan to help remedy the situation until September 2020. This, like everything else, is just smoke and mirrors. The plan is to get the public to believe that the district cares about the EL students, and you're doing something to correct the poor decisions made by your one employee and her chief of staff. Stating that the EL students will get support in advisory class when not all schools even have an advisory class, it's a shame. At some point, you have to wake up from this fog that you've been occurring with the ELs. They deserve it, they've earned it, and we make a lot of money, and so this district needs to do right at some point.
Any other speakers? Okay, to vote on this. And that passes 5-0.
I'll move item G3, the swearing in of the 2019-20 student board member.
Second.
We have a motion, and
Let's approve
I would
the
now,
swearing
yeah, we can
Should we
approve
approve the
it.
swearing in
Yes.
before we do it? It's an action item. It says action, so we need to approve it before we do
Yes.
it.
Yes, please vote on it.
Now, if we don't vote yes, I don't know what happens.
5-0. I would now like to ask student board member-elect Zachary Patterson and his family to step up to the podium for the oath of office. John, Dr. Evans is going to perform the ceremony.
Okay, first of all, I want to say this is a great opportunity. This is the first student board member of the Sandy Unified School District, and I'm going to administer the oath of office, which is, I believe, very similar to the oath of office for President of the United States, so this might be early practice for, for Zachary. Okay, so at this point, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Zachary Patterson,
I, Zachary Patterson,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties about which I am about to enter. Congratulations.
Way to go, man. Thank you.
Now here, first we're going to get a picture with the entire board. Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yes.
We're going to let you move to the next item. Okay. It's a police officer association thing, so it'll take you. So we're going to do a picture first.
All right.
Excuse me? Did we do speakers? Oh, I don't know. Marty,
We're
do we
going to
have any
have him
speakers?
move the next item, G5. No.
Thank you. I would now like to invite Mr. Patterson, ooh, what a name, to make any comments at this time.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much. This really is a momentous moment and a really special moment for me, my family, and I mean all of San Diego Unified. I think that beyond my term, there will be so many more students, and we will be able to make an impact, and we'll be able to make a district that is more student-led, that is more student-driven, and really incorporates every value that we as students want to see. I am so honored and excited to begin my term. So many people have worked hard to make this happen. I specifically want to call it Stacy Siders, who has worked with me since who as of January 9th will have worked for 3 years with me to get here. Yeah, exactly. It's amazing she made it through.
Who's counting?
Who's counting? Yeah, and I am just so privileged to be sitting up here. I want to thank my family for supporting me through this entire process. It was difficult, it was frustrating, but it was amazing. I learned a lot, and I'm going to continue to learn a lot, and I'm so excited for that. I want to thank my vice principal, Mr. V, for being here to support me. I'm so happy that I can have my, I'm so happy to have my administration here to support me. It is such a big moment for not just our school, but as I said, the whole district, so it really means a lot to me that you were able to come. I want to thank my best friend, Jake, for being able to come today. And to the students of San Diego Unified for creating an opportunity where thousands of students voted and we successfully conducted an election. That's a pretty amazing thing, and regardless of what happens in spring, regardless of what happens in the future, I know I can feel that when I leave this board, I've done something a little bit better to make this district a little bit of a better place. And I know that we as students can count on the fact that there will be a student board member always here to speak on the issues of students and to serve as that representation and that connection between the Board of Education and the students. Because there's a lot of people in between, but now we have a direct connection. And we're going to be able to make a really big impact. So thank you all so much. I'm so excited to start my term, and this will forever be a very, very large honor in my life. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you and welcome aboard. We're going to move down to item G5, which is the approval of the side letter with the San Diego School Police Officers Association. A motion on this, please? I would like to have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Madam President?
Okay,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I move item G5, approval of the side letter with the San Diego Schools Police Officers Association.
Second.
Okay, thank you. No staff presentation. Do we have any speakers?
No, we do not, but I would like to ask a point of order for our general counsel. This is an item concerning collective bargaining, so is the motion by Mr. Patterson appropriate?
The motion is fine, but he can't vote on it, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, please vote. Thank you, that passes 5-0. And now we're moving on to item H1, which is an action item also, which is the fiscal year 2019-20 first interim financial report.
I'll move item H1, the fiscal year 2019-20 first interim financial report pursuant to Education Code Section 42-130, and resolution in the matter of intent to declare positive certification at first interim and identify the amount of budget solutions needed for fiscal years 2021 and 21-22.
Second on that?
Second.
Okay. And with that, Superintendent, would you please introduce that?
Thank you, President Whitehurst-Payne. Dr. Ottinger and Ms. Thede are coming to present the item. AB 1200 requires that local education agencies file interim reports to their annual budget as of October 31st and January 31st, and the LEAs must collect the financial data for these reporting periods and prepare the appropriate interim reports for the governing board to review, approve, and submit within 45 days of close of these periods. And that's the report that you'll be receiving tonight from staff.
Thank you, Superintendent Martin. Good evening, board, entire board. This evening, we do have the opportunity to review the district's first interim financial report. As you know, this is our first public presentation of the year on what will eventually become the adopted budget for the 2021 school year. So, to get us situated, we will start with our budget timeline. As the blue arrow will indicate, we are here in December. We have an obligation to submit to the County Office of Education our first interim budget by December 15th. So we are, at the end of this presentation, we'll be asking for the board vote. So at this point, we are bringing forth our projections as we await the first look at Governor Newsom's budget in roughly a month. We will then again review with the Board of Education at the second interim, followed by the first and second read of the final budget in June. As you know, we can expect shifts and changes throughout the year, and we will continue to be nimble and prudent and make the best decisions possible as we are provided with new information and new guidance. Speaking of guidance, we do receive our guidance from the California Department of Education and the San Diego County Office of Education. And so for our multi-year projections discussed this evening, we do go by the recommendations and projections from those organizations. Along with the district, many organizations are highly attuned to the movements and actions in Sacramento. One of those is the Legislative Analyst's Office. This year, in their annual report, the Legislative Analyst's Office came out with a particularly positive outlook, Board Member Barrera mentioned it earlier, based on their process. As the outlook for California continues to be strong, we as a district and staff are very hopeful that the governor's budget will also take into account the strong need to adequately fund our education. Turning to the district, tonight our presentation of the multi-year projections include both revenue and expenditure projections. And this evening we'll be highlighting those, starting with revenue. This slide notes a summary of our revenue assumptions in the major categories. I'd like to note that at this point in the year, our enrollment projections are very, very early, and we will update these as we receive more information as the shifts and changes occur throughout the year. We'd also like to note that the cost of living adjustment here for the 2021 school year does come from the guidance from the Department of Education and also the State Department of Ed and the County Office of Education. So we have built into these numbers a 3% cost of living adjustment. Other organizations may use other numbers, so just to ground you, for the purpose of this presentation tonight, we have built in the 3.0% cost of living adjustment. So each of these numbers, all these numbers that you see, are based on the 3% COLA for 2021, and then you'll see a 2.8 projected for 21-22. Certainly we know that those issues or those percentages may change throughout the year. In terms of our multi-year assumptions on expenditures, you will see here a top-level summary of the expenditure assumptions in major categories. Of particular note, you will see our projected shortfall of $70.1 million, along with the current and future increases to PERS as that rate continues to increase significantly. You'll also note that there are different breakdowns based on the different categories. Some of those are year-over-year projections, and some of those are more finite dollar amounts, just for clarity. In terms of our expenses, quite frankly, the cost to operate the organization are increasing much faster than the revenues that we are provided from the state. Even if we were to keep all things the same within the district, not hire anyone else, not do anything significantly different, our major expenses continue in our major categories here, which would be our step and column, our pension, our health and welfare, our special education, and our utilities. Now, as you heard in the Prop YY presentation, the good news is the great work around our solar and our initiatives around the environment. We are installing more solar panels, and we are seeing those benefits to the tune of significant savings. Similar to our costs increasing with other categories, our electricity bills are also increasing for a variety of reasons. And so you would have seen in an earlier projection, though we are increasing solar, the good news is we're not projecting increase to our utilities because we're keeping up and we are moving along with the solar panel. So I want to make sure we had clarity with our presentation, the fine presentation from Mr. Dolgoroff. Our great solar installations are keeping our utility projections flat, so that expense is not increasing necessarily. The major category that needs significant work, along with the health and welfare and special education, is also really centered around our pensions. And as we look at our pension costs, and we note here for the board the overall year-over-year expense that the district has had to pull from the general fund or other appropriate fund simply to meet the additional liability from the state as for the employer portion of the employee pension costs. And you'll note here that the STRS rate is set in a different way. The PERS rate is set by a board, and so we're expecting and seeing more volatility with the PERS rate versus the STRS is set by the lawmakers. So this gives you the year over year, which is about $77 million of funding that has been borne by the district that could have gone other places due to the shifts and changes with the pension. Which leads us back to the solutions. We are asking for a vote from the board to continue to move forward, seeking solutions in the variety of forms here. Revenue increases, certainly, as we've mentioned, the governor and other potential revenue sources. Also continuing to reduce our expenses, implement program shifts, look for greater efficiencies, and also the other reductions as necessary to make sure that we, as a staff, will work thoroughly to refine the budget throughout the year as we await budget detail from Governor Newsom. We also want to note potential shifts. Again, we are in constant conversations with our colleagues in collective bargaining. These are some other shifts, including potential layoffs, additional unexpected costs and or revenues, continued minimum wage analysis, and then also additional costs listed here. This leads to a high-level recommendation to approve the first interim report to be submitted to the County Office of Education. Staff is recommending a positive certification, continue with a positive certification. We're also asking you to vote to balance the budget, to direct the executive team to lead a process to identify and implement efficiencies within the programs to ensure that our budget, we continue to bring to the board a balanced budget. We know that financial stability is one of the key priorities of this board. This board, in terms of the positive certification, has proven that you will make the hard decisions to ensure that we are balanced. This has been noted by stakeholders, including those who assign our credit ratings and certifications. So at this point, we're asking the board to take vote on the first interim financial presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, we have 2 speakers on this item, Francine Maxwell and Citizen.
Thank you. Come forward, please. 3 minutes each.
So thanks to Barrera and all his union work, you guys are looking at 5% increases. Those 5% increases in pay also increase your problems with the pension. So suggestions that I've made to you before and you don't listen include an audit of all the dependents on the medical plans. It's supposed to be done every 3 years. It hasn't been. The last time you guys did this, there was a $4 million budget savings due to 700 dependents that should not have been receiving benefits. So do another audit, and you're going to save millions of dollars. That means people's jobs, because you're already talking about layoffs. And again, you guys give out raises because of Barrera and his union buddies, and you guys have a bigger deficit every year. Overtime. So I'm looking at overtime expenses. You guys are paying a lot of overtime. Why is the San Diego High School registrar being paid $45,000 in overtime? I added it up. And that woman is cranking in the overtime. I don't even know how she can work that much and still be at school. So she must be taking her work home, because there's no way she could earn that much money and or do her regular job and the other payment that she receives. So where's that overtime? The sergeants that are working these meetings, all of them, $30,000 in overtime. My suggestion, you move these meetings to daytime so you're not paying all this staff all this overtime. $30,000 in overtime for one person? That's somebody's job. It's time for you to look at moving these meetings to daytime so you're not paying all of these people this kind of overtime. City Council does it, the County Board of Supervisors do it. If people have issues that they're concerned about, they'll make time to come during the day. These meetings are running for hours and hours. I suggest you move closed session from 3:30 in the afternoon and start the meeting at 3:30 and then move closed session afterwards. People who want to, if you ever give a report out on closed session, can wait until you guys finish your closed session and wait here for a report. You have lots and lots of ways that money is just leaking through. You're giving jobs to people. You are giving secret raises. You are finding positions by just moving them and changing the name of the position. You guys have no position control. The person that's running your HR department is incompetent. And the money is just seeping through the sieve, seeping through the sieve, seeping through the sieve, because you guys are incompetent.
Another speaker? Ms. Maxwell.
Francine Maxwell, community member. 70 million deficit. Knowing that we have a deficit, your one employee and chief of staff went and created all these positions within the last few months. More management positions than anyone could ever need. Positions for people that are their friends. So when the budget came out and we were short, their people stay, and these positions, they stay, but we take the cuts from the kids. Right now, many teachers are being asked to put in their seniority. There's a stipend that is due for certain employees that is coming up in 2020, and the clerical staff are feeling very nervous after being asked about their seniority as well. This only means that the cuts are coming. So if the cuts are coming, Why aren't they coming more cuts from Normal Street? Why aren't they being cut from the new positions that were created within the last 4 months? We already talk about all of the things that we have to pay for our unique students with their IEPs that are not being facilitated, and so that means that they're also going to lose more things and be cut. We're not having good training, and Dan was here earlier, and I think the comptroller spoke about training. You're not producing training because you're agreeing to a lot of things that should be classified as illegal. So once again, if you're being trained and you're still not doing what you need to do, that means that you are purposely not having fiduciary responsibility. So please consider and look at all the new managerial positions when it's time to cut here at Normal Street, and let's remember that clerical staff is extremely needed for people to run their campuses. Thank you.
Thank you. Board discussion, that's it for speakers. Mr. Barrera.
Thank you, President Whitehurst Payne, and thank you, Greg and Acacia and the financial and HR team that work hard to get our budget prepared at this point for first interim. And I will support the motion to move forward with a positive certification. But I will, however, say that, and we've talked about this already tonight, the fact that year after year after year, whether we were in the recession, whether we're in the recovery, that school districts up and down this state have to be having a conversation in the spring about what we're going to cut rather than what we need to invest in is a reality, because, as Dr. Evans pointed out earlier, we've been in a situation for 40 years now, for 4 decades, where California has egregiously underfunded our public schools. There's an analysis that's done every couple of years by the Education Law Center and Rutgers University, which is probably the most comprehensive look at comparisons between school funding between states. And this analysis takes into account cost of living differences. So $10,000 per student in California is a lot different than $10,000 per student in Nebraska. So this analysis looks at cost of living adjustments. This analysis also very importantly looks at the total state, gross state product and total income in a state. In other words, it looks at the wealth within a state and looks at the percentage of that wealth that goes to investment in public education. And what the analysis labels that as is the effort that a state makes in supporting its public schools. So in other words, if a state is as wealthy as the state of California, which is the wealthiest state in the nation and the wealthiest we've ever been as a state, and you compare that to a state that might have a struggling economy, that should be taken into account as well in terms of the ability, the capacity of people in a state to invest in their public schools. So when this analysis looks at the key ratings for a state around dollar per pupil adjusted for cost of living, around percentage of the state's wealth that's invested in public education, it gives letter grades to different states based on how they're doing. And there are 4 states in this country that fail on all of the key categories that this analysis looks at. And those are Florida, Louisiana, Tennessee, and California. And the fact that California fails on the most rigorous, comprehensive analysis of comparisons between states is so out of step with where the citizens of this state, where our priorities lie. Because every time, whether it's locally, as we know from our 3 bond measures over the past decade, whether it's statewide with efforts like Prop 30 and Prop 55. Hopefully, what we'll see next year with the Schools and Communities First initiative. Every time we actually ask voters in California, would you be willing to make a sacrifice to support public schools, voters in California say yes, every single time. The question is, why are we not asking our voters again and again and again across the state and locally, are you willing to either, number one, maintain a status quo where our kids just simply don't get what they need, or are you willing to invest in public schools? Why are we not asking that question more often? And why are we not asking it in a way that would have a dramatic impact on investment in public education and get us out of this 40-year cycle of disinvestment that we've been in since Prop 13? And what does that mean for us practically? When we look at a $70 million challenge at this point in time, we know that particularly under Superintendent Martin's leadership and the leadership of Stacey Monreal and our financial and HR folks in this district, we know that we turn over every rock every time we go through this budget process, that there is no efficiency that we don't identify that we use to then provide a budget solution. This is the most efficiently operated school district that it's ever been, and it's the most efficiently operated that a school district can possibly be. And with that, with the fact that we cut and cut and cut and find those efficiencies every year, again, we're looking at a conversation this spring about making cuts that our students simply cannot afford. The truth is that before we went into the recession in 2008, we didn't have enough counselors, our class sizes were too big, our social and emotional supports, for our students were too sparse. Our professional development was not at the capacity it should be, and our employees are simply underpaid and challenged to be able to continue to do their work in a region with the cost of living that we have in San Diego. That was true 11 years ago. It's more true today on every one of those items across the board. So some people want to say that the solution to our budget challenge every year is to simply pay our employees less. Yes, if our employees were paid less, the district would have more money. That is true and obvious. And it's also true and obvious that if we were to do that, if we were to fail to allow our employees to keep up with a basic cost of living every year, that we would have a very difficult time recruiting and retaining employees. And we know that this district has benefited significantly from stability of our employees. We are proud of the fact that in this district, we go against the trends that we see across the country where, for instance, teachers who, half of teachers across the country who leave within their first 5 years of the profession, in our district, over 90% of our teachers are still here after their first 5 years and then stay. And because our teachers are here and because our classified employees are here, they get better and better every year, and particularly with the investment in professional development that the superintendent has focused on. When we invest in the professional development of our people, that only benefits our students if our employees are still here to implement their own growth. So the answer is not to not allow our employees to keep up with the cost of living. The answer is not about a situation where we would be seeing continued and significant turnover of our employees every year because they can't simply afford to live in San Diego and work for our district. That is not the answer. It is not the answer to cut further the counseling needs of our students, the nursing needs of our students, the social and emotional needs of our students, the class sizes, the investment in professional development of our educators. That is not the answer either. There is one clear answer to this issue, and that is we have got to pull California out of this decades-long situation of disinvesting in public education. There are short-term solutions that are very obvious. Again, what we talked about with Dan McAllister is the state is sitting now on upwards of an $18 billion rainy day fund. Well, it rains every year in schools when we're going through this process. So what are we waiting for? Why is that fund built up, to the level that it has? People here locally, appropriately, have focused on the county of San Diego, the County Board of Supervisors, and have said, why are you building your reserve up to billions of dollars and not investing those funds into the people of San Diego who need it? Well, we don't do that as a district. We invest every dollar into our students every year because they need it. But meanwhile, we're seeing in Sacramento nearly $18 billion of a reserve fund that's sitting there that, again, has only built up over the past 5 years. More than 5 years ago, we weren't looking at the state building up a reserve fund in the way that they have. We also look at the issues of the rise in pension costs. I think everybody here, our entire board, our superintendent, and the leadership of this district, we believe in retirement security for our employees. We believe that there needs to be solvent pension funds and STRS and PERS, but we also know that when those targets of the growth of the employer contribution were made, 7 years ago, that was a different time, and in a strong economy, we know that the investments that those pension funds are making is making the pension funds more solvent and does not require the level of increased employer contribution that is appropriately assumed in our budget projections. So the state should be looking at relief for employers, certainly over this year and probably the next few years, on continuing to increase that employer contribution to the pension funds. The pension funds are perfectly capable of remaining solvent and strong without that level of increased employer contribution that we would otherwise be required to make. And as Greg, as you pointed out from the LAO analysis, the state's looking at billions of dollars of an improved revenue picture from what was assumed at the time of the adoption of the state budget. So there are short-term solutions that can alleviate the need of districts up and down the state from having to make cuts that our students can't afford and that our employees should not be forced to deal with. And then, of course, there have to be long-term solutions. Because if there are not long-term solutions, we will be coming back next year and the following year and the following year and the next 10 years and the next 20 years and the next 40 years and having the same conversation every year about what we're going to cut rather than what we're going to invest in. And what's criminal about that is that that's not what Californians want. Californians want to invest in public schools, and so we need to see leadership at the state level, from the governor and the legislature, in supporting and identifying long-term solutions that are going to put California back to what made us a great state with an incredibly healthy economy in the first place, and that was to invest in our public education system. And so as we go through this process, as we get to second interim, as we get to final budget adoption, it is important that we are clear in our conversation with Sacramento that the way to deal with our budget challenges, not just in this district, but in the large districts, in every district in this state, is not to continue to ask school boards to do what we know is wrong. And that's to make cuts that our kids can't afford, and that's to do things that our employees shouldn't have to be burdened with. It's a revenue issue. and there's short-term solutions to that revenue issue, and there are long-term solutions to that revenue issue, and those are solutions that would be supported locally and supported throughout the state. And that's the conversation that we need to embark on with our leadership in Sacramento.
Thank you, Mr. Barrera. Anybody else want to comment? Thank you. QED, that said it all. We have a motion and a second. Please vote, and you're going to announce.
Votes first, right?
Yeah, he's going to do that. And give it to you, yes, and now we'll vote, yes. You ready? Okay, the rest of us will vote. Now you announce.
Our student board member has voted yes on this item.
Okay, and that passes 5-0 for us. It's first vote, remember that, okay? Very good. Thank you. Thank you all for that. Thank you for that. Okay, item H2 is an info item. No staff presentation. Any speakers on H2?
No.
No? Okay, we have received any comments? Thank you. No, then we'll move on to H3. I'd like a motion on item
Madam President, I move item H3.
Thank you. And do we have a second on that motion?
I will second that.
Okay, thank you. No staff presentation. Any speakers? No speakers. Okay, thank you. Any comments from board members? If not, you want to get his...
I just want a clarification before we do that. We still have some co-inhabited disc schools. I think we've got Linda Vista and with Empower. Are they on the same campus? We also have our co-op at Emerson Bandini.
That's about to close.
And that's about to close. And then we have our Vista Grande, and I'm not sure who that is with Enterprise or Empower, and then we have our I don't know if we call it co-sharing the same school, but we have the we have the Lindbergh, Schweitzer, and Kavod. Is that a comprehensive list?
Webster also is co-sharing.
I don't think that's comprehensive. There's a few more.
Okay.
I think Mr. Dolgorov could come up and answer that, or somebody else. Both of you.
But if I could just chime in.
There's Global Visions Academy at Adams as well.
Yeah, I just mentioned to Dr. McQuarrie that really the Kavod and is while it technically is a co-location, they're completely separate buildings on the lot, so it's almost as if they're two just side by side.
That's going the same with Emerson Bandini, which is
There's Webster and Holly Drive. So as you were saying them, I know they weren't all, but off the top of my head, I can't remember.
So yeah, there are still a number of co-located charter schools, and this item is really meant to kind of clear up the eligibility criteria for the long-range facilities use agreements that are related to, so we have Prop 39 co-locations, and then those are year over year co-locations, and the objective of this is to clear up the criteria about how the district offers multi-year facilities use agreement license agreements for sites and when there is a co-location. And there are cases where the board approves a project. An example would be Global Vision and Adams, where the board approves a project where we would execute a project to improve the co-location scenario by creating separate space for the charter school. Or another example, that would be the Lindbergh Schweitzer Kavod project. And after the project's completed, we have almost two separate campuses operating on one piece of property. And what this item does is it allows us to extend or allow staff to bring forward items for your approval, multi-year facility use agreements that you would consider and approve for those projects that you've already approved.
Is there a long-term solution? To reduce the number of co-locations?
Yes, we are, for every co-location where there seems to be a growth in either the district school or the charter school, and there seems to be an overlap in the use of facilities, and it's sort of makes life difficult for both campuses. We are looking aggressively each year to try to find opportunities to either move or make adjustments. And in fact, this year we're in the Prop 39 cycle in terms of receiving applications. And we've already got some creative solutions for existing co-locations that we likely will present to you once the charter school and the district school agree.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Otherwise, let's vote. And yes, you're going to do his. Yeah, he can do it, but.
You can vote, she just won't reveal.
Right.
It has to be recorded.
You ready? The rest of us can vote. And his vote is?
Yes, our student board member has voted yes on this item.
Thank you, and the rest of us have voted 5-0. Thank you. Thank you all. We'll work the kinks out. Some way we'll work them out. Let us move on to item I. We had 3 items pulled, I believe.
I'll move items 7, 24, and 32 of the superintendent's consent agenda.
Second. And we have a speaker on those, just one?
No, we have a couple of speakers. Let me get back to that sheet. On item I-7, we have Francine Maxwell. On item I-24, we have Mark Santos. And on item I-32, we have Francine Maxwell, citizen, and William Ellig.
Okay.
Francine Maxwell, I-7 is the transcript work instead of the school counselors. So if you're reading this, it clearly shows you that we're at a disadvantage still. The schools north of 8 will be getting the much needed help, but they've always been historically disadvantaged because of the counselors that are on high school campuses. They're actually elementary counselors that should be actually placed back on an elementary school. So I'm wondering, once again, in your fiduciary role, why is that something that we're not paying more attention to? Instead of rotating the qualified elementary school counselors back to elementary school, you're leaving them on the high school campuses and you're paying someone else to go ahead and get everything in line, that the counselors are having a shortage because the kids are suffering when it comes to the transcript. So the district is going to pay someone, and you're already paying the counselors that are charged with doing the transcripts, and they've been doing them wrong. So it's just, once again, it's an opportunity for us to outsource and double dip, and people are still getting paid not to do something. I-32, with the $70 million budget deficit, it seems unreasonable to acquire new land when you do not have a solvent budget. And so we could stay right here. We can build a 5-story parking garage. You can build 2 towers, one tower first and then the second tower. While the plan has been in the works for many years, it's an ego thing to go and take Jack in the Box. Jack in the Box will need a renovation at a minimum of $1 million and something. That makes no sense. You have Old Town that you're going to sell. You're going to sell this. Across the street, the church just paid, I believe, $30 million, and they're taking that whole corner. So they want to come over here now and maybe give you $26 million for this, and you make it inconvenient for the community, parents, and students to come out to Jack in the Box. That is just completely ridiculous. Asking the community for more bond money when you have not legally been compliant with some of your current bond money expenditures is illegal at best. Jack in the Box, I've already mentioned. The sale of the property, then that means that those 2 properties, and you sold Dewey, so I wonder where Dewey's money is. So if you sell this land at Normal Street and you sell Old Town, then that can go into the operational budget, if I'm not mistaken, and then that will pay for the January and February raises at 3.7%. So once again, I think you need to put the kids and the parents and the community first. Stay right here. Let's redesign, because there's no reason to let the people that are across the street that just bought the church come over here and buy this.
Other speakers, come forward, please.
would like to replace all these chairs. They're so noisy. So I'm speaking on I-24. Listening to all the financial information, we know that we're in a fix right now. I don't believe this is the right time or the right issue to spend the money you're going to be spending on a lawyer firm for a lawsuit against the e-cigarette company that is not the most immediate priority and threat. It is, I grant you, an issue for this nation. There are already multiple lawsuits against this company. I would encourage you at this time to consider a cessation of all operations going forward on this item. Take that money and not spend it. If you feel you have to burn money you don't have, then put it into the schools, boots on the ground. I said this before at the last meeting. We need boots on the ground. We don't need a lawsuit against Juul e-cigarette company. I've got children over here that need help in the classroom. I've got individual teachers pulling their hair out. I've got substitute teachers that are doing the best they can, but they can't handle the kids that they're given. And I'll be back to talk about one of the impacts of why that occurs. But again, money is tight. And I, for one, don't like giving up my money. I pay a lot in taxes. This is the heaviest tax state in the country. I want to see accountability before I give up one more penny. I want to see real change and real consideration for what we're spending money on. What is the prime directive, your primary order as a Board of Education? It is to educate the children. And if that is not consuming 80% of your budget and to take care of the people who are doing the educating, then you're really not doing what I think you should be doing. So I'll end it there. The rest I'll have later. It's actually good news stuff, so you can smile then.
Thank you.
So let me explain that government has no money, okay? The money that government has is our money. So be clear about that. There isn't a bunch of money out there that's the government's money. It's our money. And thanks to Richard Barrera, we have a whole bunch of bond taxes that we're paying that are increasing rents, and they're increasing housing for people the age of this student sitting on the board will have to pay. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars on property taxes. This board has mismanaged those bonds and now is going to go out and pay $21 million using the taxpayers' credit card, the bond money. It's a credit card. You're borrowing money that you're going to have to pay back millions and millions of dollars above what this property is going to be paid for. You could have sold the Ballard property. You could have sold this property, put the money in an account, and then bought a property to move this ed center. Instead, you're going to use the taxpayer's credit card and put the burden heavier on us, okay? This student is going to buy a home someday in California, and he's going to be paying taxes until the year 2060 for buildings that are falling apart by the time that year comes around. So I want to know, why didn't you sell excess property and put the money in the bank and then go buy another property, instead of using the credit card and putting those bond taxes on the landlords that have apartment buildings that people have to rent and the people that are trying to get into homes? That's what you're doing. That's what you're doing, and that's mismanagement. With no internal auditor, that's really sweet, okay? John Lee Evans, I would appreciate it if you pay attention. You're elected to represent all of us. So you have no internal auditor. So when Richard Barrera stands up here and throws out all these lies about his reports, he cherry picks his reports, he doesn't know. Because the one person that could really answer to the mismanagement and the corruption and the bad things that are going on in this school with the budget was an internal auditor. And Cindy Martin got rid of the emails. She wanted to delete them after 6 months. And because of the outcry from the public and the media, she extended it to 2 years. Trust me, she wanted those emails to disappear because they would prove the things that she's doing that are bad. So I want to know again, why are you putting $20 million of a debt on our back? Because right here the sign says, we're spending $1.2 million a day. $1.2 million a day. And let me remind you, it's on our backs. It's on our children's backs, and it's on our grandchildren's backs. So I wish Barrera would stop talking about all this money that there is, because there isn't. It comes from the taxpayer and the working man's pocket.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Yes, Mr. Ellig and Ms. Harms.
Good evening, board members, President. My name is Bill Ellig. I'm a resident of District D and also a member of Uptown Planners. I've appeared before you before. I'm here in support of item 32 on the superintendent's consent agenda. This property will be a great asset to the district, and I'm sure will be ultimately used for great purposes. The community looks forward to working with the district to the benefit of the students, teachers, and staff, while being sensitive to the local community needs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Harms, representing the local Community Coalition of University Heights and also resident of District D. And I'm also here in support of item I-32 on the superintendent's consent agenda. We think it will be a great asset to the community at large and the entire district, and we look forward to continuing our working relationship with the board.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
That's all.
That's it. Well, we need to vote on it, but we'll just let our student vote first. You have it?
Yes.
Okay, we may vote now. And that passed. You want to announce his?
Yes, our student board member has voted yes on I-7, I-24, and I-32.
Okay, thank you. And the rest of us, 5-0.
President Whitehurst, I just want to make a comment. I agree that it would not be wise to spend a lot of money on a lawsuit for electronic cigarettes, Juul. However, if you read carefully the item, it is actually a contingency fee, which means the district pays zero, and if there is an award, we derive some of the income from that. So it's actually a potential revenue source, and there's zero expense to the district. Just want to clarify that.
I'm sorry, any other clarifications? Good. Okay, thank you. We've already voted on it, and it passes 5-0 with the student approving it also.
Yes.
And now we move to non-agenda public testimony before our final item tonight of G4. So we have some speakers on that.
Yes, we have non-agenda testimony citizen, Mark Santos, and Anna Espinoza.
So let's talk about this little media circus that Cindy's trying to pass off as the Safe Students Committee that she's created. Been through this before. Did it in 2013, did it in 2014. But I want to read this email into the record, okay? So here's Cindy Martin. By the way, this email has now been deleted. These parents, due to the unresponsiveness of the district administration to cases of child abuse and mental anguish, after hearing Cindy Martin speak today and welcoming all the big players of the child protection in our community, law enforcement, social service, the district attorney, we and dozens of families know we are finally being heard and can start trusting administration to protect our children. Please have a school website with a clear, easy-to-flow chart of how parents can report and get solid answers to their questions about abusive and frightening teachers. Thank you for your perfect comment today that we are now turning pain into action. Okay, we're talking about Martin here. This could be be your mission statement, because you are most certainly walking the walk with the parents. And Cindy Martin emails back and she says, wow, I'm crying. She cries a lot. Cries at staff meetings. She cries a lot. Never seen a superintendent cry so much. But I'll tell you who's really crying. The children that suffered sexual abuse from sexual predators working as teachers in this school district. And Cindy Martin sat silent. I sat there and I watched those trials. A young man on his 19th birthday that a teacher had sex with every morning in her classroom. On his 19th birthday, he's testifying. And then these guys that put her in office, still sitting there. I'll tell you who's crying. It's children. Not Cindy Martin. These are crocodile tears.
Any other speakers?
All righty. Thank you for the clarification. I actually got in contact out in the hallway. I didn't know that those kind of options that are afforded to injury lawyers are now afforded to school districts. Guess lawyers need a lot of work. I should have been one. CPMA update. Had a successful meeting today with CPMA, the parent. I'd like to thank Superintendent Martin for your help on that regards to make that happen. It was very positive. It ended very positive. I also was contacted by Mr. Greg Ottinger from operations concerning transportation. We had a pretty good dialogue there where I shared with him I used to be a transportation director and supervisor for the Navy as well, so I have some experience there, and we're looking forward to some future dialogue. So very positive. I also appreciate Mr. Lemon stepping up and stepping in, and even though he had hair on fire kind of morning. Cell phones. This is the item number 2 I want to talk about. Cell phones and social media. I do a lot of observing nowadays. I am an official volunteer at Lincoln High School. I wanted y'all to see that, so that goes on the record, wherever the camera is. Anyway, I'm very proud to be a volunteer. It's just returning back home to me. But one thing I do is I observe in the classrooms, and I've observed in classrooms for the last 4 years. Cell phones have the biggest negative impact in charter or public schools. Social media on those cell phones. The children that do not want to do the work is up to maybe 40% in certain classrooms, and certainly in inner city schools. It angers me that these things have so much control over their lives to where they don't want to do the work. A kid sit up there and put his leg on the table, his foot is right by the head of another student who just lays his head down. We have an issue in the classroom with cell phones, and we've got to find solutions. I know there's a federal law against jamming cell phones, and so we know that jamming cell phones is not an answer, because if you jam for students, you jam for everybody else. That's a non-starter. But somehow the board needs to address this issue, because a lot of students are missing their education. They literally are turning away from doing the work voluntarily. It's not that they can't. They choose not to.
Thank you.
One last thing on that issue. Policy on videotaping fights. There should be a policy against a setup. There was a setup at a school. The fight was videotaped, prearranged, and then it was immediately put out on social media. Disrupted an entire school for a whole day, if not the rest of the week.
Thank you. Would you report that to the superintendent and her staff, someone get that information? Thank you.
And my third area is Knox Middle School. It's a good news report. I love Knox. My heart is with Knox. Yes. You know, under a lot of criticism, I think Knox really does have the hardest working principal around. I've
Thank
been
you.
with
We'll
her
pass
for
that on, but
3 years. So 80 turkeys delivered to 80 families by staff and administration. The shoes for every student were
Thank
Vans and
you.
not Converse.
Thank you.
Newly
Thank you.
Newly
3
sodded
minutes.
sports field. The Chargers came out.
I know, I was there.
We're
I was
not
there.
advertising.
I know, they need to do some PR. Thank you.
Grant for library renovation.
Yes, they're doing a lot of good things. I thank you for some positive kudos. And with that, we move on to item G4. As we do our annual organization of the Board of Education, the election of board president and vice president, I would like to just say that thank you for putting up with me this year, with your patience. I think we did move into this century with at least having names entered online rather than bits and pieces of paper. And we also have the board action officer calling names, and people can now just go online and sign up and so forth. So I think we've come a long ways this year, but I'm sure that next folks will take us on to the next level. With that, do we have any speakers on item G4? Thank you. And so we move on
President
from
Whitehurst
there.
Payne, could I just say, I want to thank you for your leadership over this last year as president of our board. I think our meetings have never been so well organized and tightly run, and but allowing for everybody to get their perspectives. You've done really a fantastic job, and also representing the school district and the community. So thank you for your service this year.
Thank you. And I so gladly hand it off to you.
What trustee Richard Barrera said. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't make those
As we move on to vote for the next board president, I'd like to rise in support of John Lee Evans to ascend to the office of president of the Board of Education.
It's supposed to be secret. Okay. But please vote and sign off and pass it over to...
Remember, it's secret ballot.
That's what it was.
There we go.
Oh.
Any comment?
Honored to be participating and just viewing.
All right, trustee Barrera has voted for trustee Evans for president. Trustee McQuarrie has voted for trustee Evans for president. Trustee Whitehurst Payne has voted for trustee Evans for president. Trustee Evans has voted for trustee Evans for president. And trustee Beiser has voted for trustee Evans for president, and that is five votes for president.
Speech.
I'd like to make a comment, not about me, but in terms of vice president. I came onto the board with Richard Barrera, and so for my last year, I would be happy if Richard Barrera would serve as vice president. That's just my comment. We don't officially nominate.
My comment, Dr. Evans, is I concur. As much as I'd like to put a check by Dr. McQuarrie's name to be VP, I think it's Richard Barrera's turn. And especially in light of our $70 million solution we're looking for. Thank you, Mr. Barrera.
And my comment is, I'm glad not to have these extra meetings as officer. That was nice, but, you guys can handle it for a while. We have 2 or 3 extra meetings. So please vote. Get back to my computer.
All right, trustee McQuarrie has voted for trustee Barrera for vice president. Trustee Barrera has voted for trustee Barrera for vice president. Trustee Whitehurst Payne has voted for trustee Barrera for vice president. Trustee Evans has voted for trustee Barrera for vice president. And trustee Beiser has voted for trustee Barrera for vice president, and that's 5-0.
5-0, congratulations. We pass the gavel on. Let's see. This concludes the agendized business of the board. John, you want to hit it? I'll let you do it.
Okay, the next, we're going to adjourn this meeting. The next board meeting will be on December 17th.
Thank you.